I'm going to show you how I separate my worm farm into 3 products: worm cocoons or eggs, worm castings and worms. So what we want to do is separate these, as that really helps with the worm composting process. We don't want to be adding worms and eggs to our garden when we're adding worm castings as a fertilizer, because we want to keep our worms and eggs in our worm farm and we want them to reproduce. We don't need to add eggs and worms into the garden, because worms will appear there by themselves if you have the right microbiology and food for the microorganisms and worms. So let me show you how I do this. I've made this piece of wood here, okay, with some lips on, and that clips onto a wheelbarrow, okay. And then I've got these grills, these meshes on wheels, okay. So I've got 2 of these, and then if you look closely over here, we have 4.5mm ones, okay, and these ones will allow worm cocoons to fall through, and baby worms, but not the big worms. And this is so we can keep the big worms to go to our breeders. And then in here we have a smaller 3mm mesh, and what this will do, this will allow the worm castings to fall through but not allow worms or eggs to fall through. So this allows us to make our worm castings so we can send them to the garden or sell them. So let me show you how it works. I actually put them on top of each other. Okay, I take my worm castings from here, the worm farm, and then I put 3 scoops on here, and then with this I shake it, and that just gets rid of really big bits which I don't want in my worm farm. Going forwards, when I feed my worm farm, I'm not going to put big bits in there, so it makes the sifting faster. So I'm just going to have finished compost instead. So I get this stuff, and that goes into a bucket to be used as mulch around trees. And then I shake this with the wheels. I'm going to have a look closely here. So what that does is it stops any worms going through. If there are worms, you see there are worms around. Okay, but any eggs or fine particles of worm castings will fall through. So then this goes into my bucket. Okay, and I can then add these worms back into a breeder farm, or I can use horizontal migration. You can see my other video on that, to remove the worms from here. Then this one, I shake a bit more, and you'll see some baby worms have gone through, so we can just grab them. And then in here, we will have the worm eggs, the worm cocoons. There's a little maggot, it's not supposed to be here. We'll feed that to the chickens. So then I'll take my worm cocoons. Oh dear, it broke. I take my worm cocoons and I put them into the nursery for them to hatch. And then over here in my wheelbarrow, I have finished worm castings, which is just like a beautiful, wonderful powder, nice and fine, ready for the garden. And it has no worms in, no worm cocoons, and it's just a wonderful, wonderful soil amendment to add to the garden. And previously, I wouldn't have done this. So every time I added compost to the garden from the worms, I lose eggs and I lose worms, which means I have less production in my worm farm. It also meant when I was selling worms, I used to sell them with the worm castings. They would get the worms they paid for, plus little baby tiny worms and loads of eggs. So it's more productive for me to sell the worms without the eggs, so I can keep them to hatch. And now with this system, I can harvest worms much faster. I can harvest worm castings better. So it's much quicker and easier for me to do it, and so I can actually fulfill my orders when people buy worms or castings much more quickly. So I do have a playlist. You can check the playlist about my worm farms and other worm composting videos. And if you enjoyed the video, please do subscribe, and you can also get in touch if you would like to buy worm castings or worms. Thank you.